Hello and good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us, especially on your lunch hour. We thought we'd try this as a time to try and provide a great town hall experience. While many employers were caught off guard and therefore unprepared for the first wave of the pandemic, we don't have to be unprepared as we enter the second one. Now's the time for employers to assess their preparedness and take steps that will help ensure the safety of their staff and customers, as well as the survival of their business. Preparedness plans include assessing health and safety policies and planning for financial impact and employee support and engagement. As governments ramp up restrictions, again in the face of a resurgence in new COVID cases, some say they're being met with pandemic fatigue on the part of public. Healthcare and other frontline workers, as well as families, are struggling to respond to all of this. The COVID pandemic has resulted in unprecedented change for everyone. We all have experienced significant changes to our work and personal lives, which has resulted in added stress and worry. Our hope through the information presented and discussion during the webinar today is that we might be able to help you cope a little bit better and be more prepared to make it through the second wave positively while testing negative. Hi, I'm Joe Salemi. I'm the Deputy Executive Director here at Landscape Ontario, and we have another all-star cast on the panel today as we're talking about being prepared as we come into the second wave. We have Sheila James joining us. Hi, Sheila. Sheila has been a health and safety consultant with Workplace Safety and Prevention Services for 27 years. She was a paramedic in New York, where she saw every kind of accident and injury you can imagine. She has a beef farm that has been in the family for over 100 years, and for Halloween, she's dressing up like a landscape professional. We have John Durzi. He's in sales and business development for Miller Compost. Hey, John, thanks for joining us. When John isn't playing in the dirt, he enjoys cooking and cleaning and coaching his children's hockey teams. We have Peter Guinane. Peter, thanks so much for joining us today. He co-founded Oriole Landscaping, and starting with design build and designing and building simple landscapes for Toronto homeowners. And he did this to help put himself through university. Over the years, Peter's worked diligently to build an award-winning firm offering landscape design, construction, and project management. As an avid hockey fan who loves running, skiing, canoeing, and mountain biking, is there any fitness activity you don't enjoy, Peter? Alan, we have Alan White, our chair of the COVID-19 task force. Hey, Alan. He started Turf Systems almost 30 years ago with a belief that by creating healthy lawns in our communities, his clients would benefit not only by the enjoyment they gain from their landscape, but the contributions their lawn provides to the environment and their family's well-being. In the warm months, Alan can likely be found in cottage country out on the water, enjoying time with his family. And in the colder months, you'll probably still find him in cottage country, but on a sled on the trails. And then we have Mr. Jamie Riddell. Thanks, Jamie, for joining us. He's an area manager for Site One Landscape Supply for the last 6 years. And prior to that, he worked in the field as a sales rep and spent time in the field as a contractor. Site One is a company that believes in the safety of its associates, the customers, and public being the first priority. And the current pandemic has made this even more clear. When he isn't solving supply challenges for his landscape clients, he's spending as much time with his family as possible. And I recently learned that the first airplane that he flew in, he jumped out of. There's got to be a story there. And I'm sure we'll dig into that another time. Sheila, I'd like to pass it over to you to take us through your presentation. And following that, we'll have some questions for you and the panel. And I'd also like to invite the attendees today, everyone joining us and watching and listening in, to ask lots of questions and to have lots of conversation in the chat. So I'll fire up your slide deck and we'll hand it over to you.
There we go. We'll get started now. So as Joe mentioned, I'm speaking today about COVID. And I know you're sick and tired of hearing about COVID, but I just wanted to take a few moments today and talk about how COVID is affecting your workers, your business. Next slide, Joe. The Workplace Safety and Prevention Services, we are a not-for-profit organization committed to protecting Ontario workers and businesses. We're a proud partner in Ontario's occupational health and safety system and of Landscape Ontario. We offer health and safety expertise, consulting, safety training, and lots of resources. Okay. Today, our objectives are to review the ways to prepare for the second wave of COVID-19. I'll review the guidance for the landscape sector and what resources and support are available. Now, one of my coworkers, Stephen Shaw, recently published an article on ways to prepare for the second wave of COVID. And I wanted to, he made a lot of really good points. So I just thought I would speak to these points that he has brought to our attention. Firstly, I think it's time now that we've been in this for how many months, time to stop and review your company response to COVID-19. How has it worked so far? Would you have done anything differently? Do you find that your employees and customers are following your COVID precautions? If not, what's stopping them? And I'll put a question out to everyone at home and to the panel, and we'll talk about this a little later. How do you get your workers to take precautions? Because there are, you know yourself that once you tell the workers what needs to be done today and you turn your back and you walk away, how many of your workers are actually wearing the masks when they should? So how do you get the workers to take all the necessary precautions? It's not easy. For example, I talked to one landscaper who said that what they do is every worker drives to landscape job sites in their personal car. They eat their lunch in their personal car. That's their kind of safe bubble. Another landscaper I spoke to said they have 2 workers in the trucks. One is the driver and one is in the passenger seat, both wearing masks. I spoke to another landscaper who said, well, wearing masks and all that stuff, that's the worker's personal preference. So where are you in the realm of taking COVID precautions? And we'll have a discussion on that a little bit later. Now, if you haven't conducted a thorough COVID hazard assessment at your company, now might be a good time to do that. So have a look. Did you find, especially during the summer, that wearing the masks when it was super hot, did you have any workers that felt overcome by heat or heat exhaustion? Or if they're on a job site and they are lifting some heavy stone, or they're lifting a tamper into the back of the trailer and it's a 2-person job, Were they hesitant about doing that because they wanted to keep their distance? Did they pull their mask up as two people were doing the two-person lift? So now is a good time to have a look to see if the COVID precautions that you put in place, did they actually introduce new hazards to your workers? Integrate new COVID-19 policies and procedures into your established policies and procedures. I'm thinking about first aid, for example. If a worker sprains an ankle, cuts themselves, and we need to get the first aider on the job site to come to the rescue. How do COVID precautions fit into that scenario? And as I mentioned, what are your traveling from job sites or doing deliveries? How are your workers to do COVID precautions when they're traveling? Do you have any office staff that could work from home? So those are some things to think about. And as it seems like we are in wave 2 or stage 2, and the second wave of COVID, keep in the back of your mind that we need to be always ready in case they put the full lockdown on us again. Remember, at the beginning of COVID back in the spring, and everybody was locked down and nobody was to do anything? I hope that doesn't happen again, but be prepared for that happening. Keep your emergency contact list up to date as well. And I'm sure that you have this already. If a worker gets hurt on the job, you would have an emergency contact phone number of the family member if the worker had to go to the hospital, for example. Same thing for COVID, and you would also want to have the telehealth phone number up your sleeve, the phone number of your public health unit handy. Record contact information for all visitors, because your supply chain, when you have a truck that delivers interlock or gravel or sod or trees to your business, keep track of that. Keep track of what companies delivered to you at your job sites or at your depot, so that if one of your workers does test positive, then you would need to contact those people that made deliveries to your company in the past 14 days would need to be notified about that. And likewise, if the delivery person that was delivering those things to your job sites or your depot, if that truck driver got COVID, they need to contact you so that you can do the contact tracing of which ones of your workers may have been exposed to that truck driver, for example. Next. You need to continue to monitor COVID-19 in your area so that you know what stage your region is at and how the pandemic is trending, how would a change affect your customers and your suppliers. Have you had any of your customers that have been closed down because of COVID, or any of your suppliers that were closed down? That all affects your business. Make sure that you have enough personal protective equipment and other supplies on hand. This week, for my personal need, I needed some N95 respirators to do a job around my farm. And I went to town, and there were no N95 respirators to be purchased anywhere. So it made me ask, for your workers that are cutting stone, the pandemic masks, the disposable masks like that, that's not sufficient. You need N95 respirators. So you need to source them wherever you can, to protect your workers from the dust and particulate, as well as having enough personal protective equipment on hand to protect from COVID-19. Do you have enough hand sanitizer? Do you have enough disposable masks? How about nitrile gloves? So keep enough on hand so that we don't run out again. Keep your employees engaged in minimizing the COVID hazards. I'm always surprised at how many people and friends and relatives of mine really aren't paying attention to this COVID. They think that, well, they don't know anybody that died from it, so it doesn't affect them. It won't affect them. They don't realize, so they don't take the precautions. Please, please, please communicate to your workers so they know more and more and more about COVID, so that they will take the initiative to protect themselves and everyone in their family. And there are lots of sources of information you can use. On our WSPS.ca website, we've got COVID fact sheets that you can use as tailgate talks. But do COVID tailgate talks regularly. Keep your ear to the ground with your workers. What are they saying about the fun times they had on the weekend? If they're talking about the party that they went to on the weekend, or their dating, or they had the whole family over for Thanksgiving, or they're at a buddy's place for a barbecue, keep your ear to the ground for that kind of conversations, because things like that put your company at risk. If that worker that went to a party on the weekend gets COVID and goes and gets tested and tests positive, then all of your staff that were in contact with that worker in the past 14 days will have to be put into COVID isolation for 14 days. So that truly affects your business when workers are going to parties and having family over. So the more that the workers know about this COVID and what the risks are and how it can affect everybody on their team, then the better. By communicating as much as you can to your workers about COVID, then better chance that they will be taking the precautions. And that helps your company image with customers, with your supply chain as well. You also want to up your efforts to minimize employee stress and anxiety, because workers are burnt out. They're burnt out with this whole COVID thing because it's no fun. They can't have any fun. So I want to ask you, what are you doing to make work more fun? Are you rewarding good behavior when they are wearing their masks, when they are sanitizing their hands? What do you do to put a smile on the worker's face? Do they enjoy coming to work, or do they dread it? So that's because everybody's burnt out with COVID, and they're sick and tired of it. So somehow, some way, we want to have a happy crew. Consider your options for continuing or restarting your health and safety training. As I mentioned, you can do COVID tailgate training. Talk about COVID every day. Tell them, oh, the numbers are going up. We have to be careful when we're around customers, around each other, and don't let your regular health and safety training, don't let it ease up. We have to continue with the regular things. Here's how not to injure your back. Here's watch out for the dust when you're cutting stone. All those things, we have to continue with all that. I know it's not easy. And promote flu vaccinations to keep your workers healthy, because as we move into our regular cold and flu season, if a worker comes to work and he's got the cold or cold symptoms, we are suddenly, does he have the cold or does he have COVID? And you have to ask the worker to leave the job site, to go and get COVID tested, and to let you know if they test positive for COVID or not. If they test positive, like I said, then everyone that has worked with that worker in the past 14 days would have to self-isolate. So if you can encourage your workers to go and get flu vaccinations, because this affects everybody else on their crew. If they get the cold or flu and they have to go and get the COVID tests, then they're off work. So that affects those workers, and it can affect other workers on their crew as well. I just want to mention to you that if you go to our website, we have there's a COVID poster that we have that you can post in the washroom or in the lunchroom, just to remind workers about COVID, what precautions to take. I mentioned to you that on our website we have plenty of fact sheets that you can use as tailgate talks, as well as videos. So many workers are, they would probably like to watch a YouTube video on COVID rather than read a fact sheet. So we have that. We have YouTube videos that we've made that are talking about COVID. So consider that as another way to keep your workers up to date with COVID and the importance of them taking precautions. We do have on our website, we have checklists. You know, there's the checklists that things for you to consider in your workplace. There's the checklists that for the workers, and I don't know if you do this or not, have the workers fill out a health checklist before they come to work each day that says, do you have a cough? Do you have the sniffles? Do you have a fever? Do you have any of these symptoms? And it lists all the symptoms. So that's a nice thing for each of your workers to have on there. You would send that that checklist to them by their email or text or something, so that they have that checklist of all of the symptoms at their fingertips. We have courses available on COVID. And while you're there on our website, I'm not sure if you knew that we have a landscape safety awareness, and that is just landscape safety, but it's an e-course. So if you prefer to do the courses online, this is a nice, easy way. And I hope that all of you have the Landscape Ontario tailgate talks, the nice little booklet that you worked with us to put that together. That's such a handy resource for you. So those are all the comments that I have from my end. Back to you, host Joe.
Thank you so much, Sheila. I'm just going to stop your slide deck here, and we'll ask all the panelists to come back. Sheila, you and the folks at WSPS have just been so helpful in providing guidance to the landscape sector. And I'll tell you, all of the guidance that you have provided, we've linked to on the Landscape Ontario COVID-19 Resource Hub. And anytime WSPS puts guidance or updates their guidance, we're sending that out to our membership. So we just so believe in the important work that you're doing. So thank you again. And for all of your, specifically your contributions over the years. I know that you've been very involved with Landscape Ontario. So thank you. So a question for you, Sheila, and the rest of the panel. So I'd like everybody to kind of weigh in on this. Sheila kind of alluded to it. COVID fatigue is setting in, and all the fun things that we would consider doing without the presence of COVID just can't happen. We can't get together in big groups. We can't celebrate in fun ways like that, which is kind of bringing a lot of people down. So in your organizations, James, I'll start with you, and then we'll continue on through the panel. What are some of the things that you're doing in your organization to put a smile on your team members' faces?
Sure. Well, it's been a great year for a lot of things. It's been a down year for some things, but one thing that it's been really great for is having all of our partners, whether it's vendor or customer or coworkers, acknowledge the efforts that everybody else is putting forward. So what we're doing to put smiles on people's faces is we're celebrating the victories as they come in. And I think there's probably a lot more focus on the day-to-day celebrations of positive feedback. The rule in our company is you're always looking to catch somebody doing something right and reward it. So a lot more public award ceremonies, a lot more public recognition, and really it's hard to do because we are a very tight-knit group of people, and we are used to going out for wings and being able to celebrate those things in a different way. But it's really forced us to teach ourselves on how to celebrate and make the contributions and all the feedback as positive and as meaningful as it's been, because you can't celebrate in the traditional ways that we used to. So a lot more public thanking, a lot more meetings, a lot more trying to get the team to work, communicating together a little bit more. Anything we can do to get more positive interaction.
Right on. Thank you. Alan, we'll come over to you.
Yeah, I think it's been a unique, what James is saying, is having a much more positive upbeat as far as our business cycle, our interaction with the consumer market and our own peers has been pretty upbeat once we took away the uncertainty of the first phase. So I think, as we've mentioned a few times here, being a lot more prepared has helped. But I also think as a company, as we go through it, our consistent dedication to the safety protection of the employees and having those positive conversations, and as an employer putting those protocols in place and consistently reviewing them, actually really relieves a lot of people's stress levels. Anything we can do to take the stigma away from it, the stress that comes with it, turn the conversation, even if they're filling out contact tracing forms and things, make them as easy as possible, so that we're always looking at protocols. How do we make it better for the employees so that it avoids the fatigue, so it avoids the repetition, do it new ways, create anything we can do to do it to kind of alleviate some of that stress that comes with it, because that's a big part. It's the mental health that's coming with it. But our employees are constantly kind of letting us know how much they appreciate having the right PPE available, having all the right protocols, having the ability to go get a test, having the empathy and compassion at the office, that family and community is first and foremost at the front of our culture. And I think that just reinstills the positivity, because otherwise obviously the news cycles, the community, and all the other pressures are coming on. If you don't have that comfort level when you come into work, that everybody's doing what they can together and having an open forum, and obviously being considerate, that it's not something that we look down on. And as a company, we see the positive light of operating under this kind of new regime.
Right on. Thanks, Alan. Peter, we'll come over to you. How are you keeping smiles on your people's faces and motivating them to show up for work every day?
So I've had a lot of practice trying to make my employees happy. That's been my job one for 34 years now. So it is different this year. We have had to do different things, but much to James's point about focusing on positives and celebrating wins and catching people doing the right thing. That's the best approach anytime, before, during, and after COVID. So, it's unique now because we have additional needs of, with the masks and the social distancing, the hand washing, and the social bubbles, and so it's a lot more work. But we've had a lot of time now. We've had 7 or 8 months, and I've said right from the beginning, when they first announced that masks were going to be recommended, that it was going to take time to get used to it. It's going to take constant pressure to get in a good habit. And like all our other safety expectations with our staff, it's for their own good. It requires constant encouragement to stay on track, but it is just about building good habits. And as long as you're consistent in your messaging, you can develop good habits. And specifically, we try to avoid dwelling on all the negatives of COVID. We encourage them to do the right thing. We don't have to experience any of those negatives. We wear fluorescent colors so that nobody gets hit by a vehicle. I don't have to tell them twice how horrible that would be. And now that we're all in the habit of wearing our fluorescent colors, then we can move on and we can be happy that we're being safe. We don't have to worry about vehicles as much. And if we all wear the masks and wash our hands, we don't have to worry about COVID as much. And that makes them a little less stressed about COVID. If they know all their coworkers are being safe and have their best interests at heart, then we can all be a little bit more comfortable with each other.
Sounds great. Yeah, those practices stand true no matter if you're in a pandemic or not, right? One of the things that we're doing here at Landscape Ontario is a Friday afternoon virtual happy hour. And while it's not so much about the drink, it's more about getting together socially. We're all working from home, and to get together and have some connected time outside of, discussion and talking shop. So we found that it's really helped bring a lot of people together and really knocking out that working in a vacuum mentality. John, we'll come over to you.
Yeah, so COVID has clearly changed the way that we've operated day to day, season to season. We've canceled all of our company functions, our staff barbecues, our employee appreciation days, and customer appreciation days. So what we've done is we've just kept it super positive around the office, and we've started having more ordering in of pizza or Greek food or something that the staff really enjoy. We try to keep it changed up. Keeping the staff motivated is always a challenge. It always has been. But I think with COVID, what it's done is it's really brought our team closer together, and we've respected everybody's opinion on different things that are happening in and around the yard in the office. So from someone sweeping the floors to upper management, it's brought us all together to consolidate all of our ideas and make suggestions for moving forward. We've really dumbed down the process as well as our daily check-ins. We've simplified it, made it quick and able to gather all the information required at the beginning of the day, super easy. And we've just been super positive around the office. Another distraction is being really busy. And we have had an extremely busy year. So there are times when staff get really exhausted and tired, and we all see the light at the end of the tunnel. The winter's coming, and it's a bit of a break for us. And it's really just been head down and super positive and keeping morale steady that way.
Right on. Thanks, John. And Sheila, we'll come over to you. Maybe some of the things that are happening over at WSPS, or some advice you might have for our contractor members
on how to keep them happy.
Yeah, keep them smiling.
I don't have great advice. I'm like, who was it? I'm working from home and isolated. So we've made a real point that to phone each other and just for no reason, just to chat, just for fun.
Yeah, there's an interesting concept there, and something that I've been using quite a bit is the buddy check-in system. So someone you know really, really well, especially for the leaders that are here today, because leadership can be lonely. And, the things that you want to vent about or talk about, you can't always talk to, a crew member about, without adding additional stress or anxiety to them. So having a buddy to be able to check in with and just talk about all the things that you need to talk about, and, go vice versa, I think it's really important. So a question for everyone. Including all of those that are watching and listening in. Do you feel more prepared going into the second wave than you did the first? James?
Yeah, I definitely feel like we are significantly more prepared. I think individually we were more prepared heading in, meaning the staff check-in lists, although necessary, and we've been doing right from the very beginning. A lot of people don't even bother coming to work if they have the sniffles. They just simply call in, or if they have a cough, right? They're calling the manager, calling into our company hotline and telehealth, and they're really being proactive and preventative, right? Because everybody understands now the impact that their behavior can have on everybody in their bubble. So it's been a fantastic thing. I think we as a company were more prepared. We stayed on top of having personal protective equipment. We stayed on having cleaning supplies, a regular supply chain for that. I absolutely think we were 100% more prepared for the operational or task-oriented nature of COVID. The emotional side, I don't think anyone's ever really prepared, because as we've experienced going through this, on a day-to-day basis, your emotions can swing from one side to the other. Everything that goes on in our life now is emotional, whether it's, the school calls and your child is showing some symptoms, to, your partner may not be feeling great, right? Everything that we experience in the pandemic is emotional. And I think that is the part that I don't think everyone is prepared for on a day-to-day basis, and getting up in the morning and really taking a good stock and as they say, choosing your attitude before heading out the door. That's what you can do to be prepared for the second wave, is to really take good stock of that and acknowledge that there's different emotions going on. But from a task-oriented standpoint, we certainly were. From an emotional, I think you always need to work on that. So,
yeah, great point. Alan?
Yeah, I think as we came into it, obviously we learned a lot, both individually as business owners, with our workforce, and as a community, dealing with the unknowns and the uncertainty. But going into this phase, we never really let off on the gas as far as constantly improving, modifying, and learning about protocols as we deal not just with COVID-19, but just infectious diseases, and how obviously it impacts our workforce, and the work environment that we have, whether it's a job site out in the field or within an administrative office envelope. So I think a big part of it, now that everything's calmed down, besides toilet paper and paper towels still being an ongoing issue from week to week, and no rhyme or reason, but the supply chain is definitely, for the most part, caught up. A lot of innovations come in to make it accessible. So it's also a way that as an employer, we're able to demonstrate to our employees that we're constantly evolving. So in inputting these new changes also takes away a bit of the fatigue. Well, as your reporting form, I know we've shared through the task force and the resource page, moving some of the checklists to digital, takes away some of the fatigue, takes away the paper. Also smart, because we're constantly thinking, how do we avoid touch points? Our pay clock systems, that's evolved. Moving all our paper towel dispensers just to automatic paper towel dispensers, our hand sanitization stations at all entry points, with checklists to automated or battery operated, hands-free. Those just every couple of weeks we put one of these tools in place. It just reaffirms to our team and our culture that we're doing the best we can, and it reminds them to not let their guard down. So I think all those things kind of keep it positive. We have a positive face to it. We never bring up the pain and anxiety and the stress it causes to all these extra time protocols. Obviously, it's going to have an impact on your bottom line, but financially and everything else, we just keep looking at it with the positive. This is how we're going to protect our employees and keep a positive workforce. So I think second wave is certainly, we knew from first it was inevitable. I'm positively optimistic in the sense that it seems to be a way more, not just on our part, but everybody, our supply chain, our visitors, are doing their part to participate. And nobody seems really disgruntled or put out of place when you ask them to do a new protocol when they show up at your work site or your workplace. So I think all these things are way different now as we go into November compared to obviously April. Though infectious diseases have been around as long as we have, it wasn't front and center in our safety protocols. But I believe for the most part, when I meet with employers and individuals, even from the grocery stores and everything else, the majority of the population has really embraced that it's for everybody. It's not just for me individually, which is a very different perspective of safety that we have dealt with in the past.
Yeah, no doubt. It sounds, based on what James has said and what you're saying, it's becoming embedded in the culture of your organization. I think that's really important.
It's really
Peter,
even in society, we see it. It's a Canadian. Don't go far south of the border and see the difference in what attitude and culture will do. So we know it's true on the macro scale, but we also know, and I think James and others on this task force from day one have always said, to be effective and successful and positive, it has to be culture based. Yeah. It can't be just fancy posters and dictating this is the way it's going to be. It really has to be like we've experienced with safety vests there. It has to be embedded in your culture that safety and the protection of yourself and others is paramount if the team is going to be successful.
Absolutely. Peter, do you feel more prepared this time around?
So there's a couple things that are better, in addition to what James and Alan had mentioned. At this second wave, we have now crews that have been together all summer. So they've learned to work together. They've learned to trust each other, to rely on each other. And we've become more accustomed to our personal habits and how that can affect our coworkers. So we have that camaraderie is now making all of our staff feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit better prepared. Back in April, we didn't know where it was coming from. We didn't know where to expect it from. We were bringing our crews together for the first time for the season startup. So they were, for all intents and purposes, they were strangers coming together. Even if they'd worked together the year before, they were still like potential vectors for this disease. So everyone was very tentative in the beginning. So I think that's a substantial change in their anxiety level at this point. And personally, as a business owner, back in March and April, we were preaching about cash flow, the cash is king, hold off on your equipment payments, hoard cash. People weren't sure if they were going to have jobs for the summer. So there's a lot of anxiety for me as a business owner, and I'm sure I wasn't able to hide that entirely from my staff. But we did learn how to work with it. We did end up getting a lot of work. The government also chipped in some subsidies in the spring for that shortage of work. And in the spirit of hoarding my cash, I have made sure I've set aside money to account for potential shutdowns that are still ahead of us in all likelihood. At least individual crews will be shut down when it affects people in my company. I have my crews, hopefully they continue to stay separated. So when one crew is infected, it doesn't infect any of my other crews. So I'll never have an entire company shut down if all goes well. But we do have money available to make sure I can pay my staff to stay home when they're not feeling well. And that's a level of comfort that I have, that I can now be more generous and fair toward my employees. And I hope that they know that they've got a secure place of employment, and that helps everybody feel a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, fantastic. And it's a great point about that financial anxiety as well. John.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I think for most companies, they've gone through the stress and the worry right out of the beginning, the big unknowns. And I think as they've prepared themselves and started putting their checklists together, crews together, designated tools, and did whatever they needed to streamline their businesses for the pandemic, they're definitely going into this, what we call phase 2 or reoccurrence. They're all better prepared. I know we're better prepared, but I think the bigger thing that we're really watching is what the mental health of everyone is happening. So mental health, meaning in the first phase, everyone was super anxious and they started losing their passions, like going to the gym or dance studios and restaurants, or going to bars and big family gatherings. As they lost all that stuff, you could see change. And I think that's what phase 2 is more of the worry for us is understanding everyone's concerns and understanding their mental health issues and what really drives them personally as individuals. I think moving into phase 2, we're definitely more prepared as a business, but it's more focused on the employee themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, great points. Sheila, what do you think?
I know from my perspective, being a health and safety consultant, we're far more prepared, and thank heavens we have the internet and we have webcams. We're able to do so much more consulting and training to workers virtually. And the same goes for the landscape industry as well. There's so much that can be done. If a worker has a cell phone, there's the checklist on there. There's the tailgates we can do on there. There's so much that can be done online.
Yeah, absolutely. Our hour is going by so quickly. I want to get to a question that I know that that is on the minds of quite a few people that have joined us today. What and for the panel and for everyone joining us, what measures have you put into place to cover off absenteeism as the flu season starts to overlap with the pandemic? Jamie, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Fortunately, we have a significant amount of teams, significant amount of players on all of our teams, and this time of year, if we're minus a player or two per location, we can handle that increased demand by bringing some of our people that we have working from home, not quarantine, but working from home into the stores to be able to fill some of those voids. But one of the biggest challenges I face right now as we prepare for the off season and get into things like physical inventory is how do you prepare for the inevitable that something could happen in a store and wipe out, have everybody at the store at home in quarantine, and we still have functions to perform. So we actually keep a reserve team that rotates every once in a while, but right now it's predominantly people working from home so that if a team goes down, we can parachute in after a deep clean. We can parachute in and just fill in those shoes. But you definitely have to think ahead. You have to plan weeks out who's going to be what. And you need to stay.
We lost that last little bit from you.
It's a constant planning. You always need to be ready to move pieces at all times. Be really aware of who's what. And again, as was mentioned earlier, we need to make sure that we're listening to the conversations about what's happening on weekends and ensure we're asking everybody to do the right thing for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. Alan?
Yeah, I think a bit of it lives a little
You're
bit
muted.
Oh, still back on now?
Yep, you're good. You're good.
Okay. A big part, it's dealing with the pandemic is just a bigger, wider uncertainty, but building bench strength as you look at your teams, it's always been a good idea to put some forethought into how you deal with absenteeism. This has just only amplified it more now. A little bit of it's making sure the employees are comfortable, and as Peter alluded to, you have reserves and abilities so that the employee feels comfortable doing the right thing, but also be proactive in the sense of having return to work protocols in play to get them through the process as quickly as possible, especially knowing that sniffles and flu season and cold season, they're all coming on us at the same time. So making sure as an employer, you understand as well the protocols of telehealth and what resources are available, whether through family doctors or just your own public health unit within your region, just to get them comfortable and through. The hope that rapid testing is right around the corner will hopefully help with this a little bit. And I think we also have to consider in a way greater way things and protocols that we can encourage our employees to do that historically wouldn't have been a big deal before. But again, proper cold protocols. I think we're doing a lot of it now just with proper hygiene. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out when we see numbers on flus and colds, because we know certainly there's way more hand washing going on, and just everybody wearing masks and things. But consider encouraging employees to get flu shots and things that you wouldn't normally. Anything you can do to reduce their chance of getting sick, I think is going to reduce their stress levels as it relates to this pandemic. But again, this is our next biggest uncertain period because we didn't have obviously in April all these things coming into us other than maybe allergy season, but most people know what those symptoms are. But I think right now it's just preparedness like we always are and doing what we can to make sure that we've built bench strength to deal with high absenteeism.
Yeah, great. Absolutely. Peter.
Yeah, we have, again, like Alan said, we have always had some absenteeism, and so we do have a bit of depth where we have our crews are 3 or 4 people. So if one person is absent, we've always been able to sort of flex around that. It's different now because if one person is sick with potential COVID symptoms, we make the whole crew stay home. The good news is it's only happened a couple of times for us, but we've had the employee get tested. We hear back 24 hours later when it has happened. It has been pretty quick. So the crew has been off work for maybe 2 days tops. And that's happened a couple of times. And hopefully the test turnaround is quick and we can continue with that system. So far, so good. And our employees, I mean, they get paid if they stay home. The whole crew gets paid if they stay home. So I'm trying to encourage that safe behavior. And they really, I don't think they like staying home. They all enjoy doing the work and getting, earning a proper living. So I don't seem to have any problems managing that or anyone taking advantage of it.
Wonderful. John?
Yeah, so I think the big worry for Miller Compost and other transfer stations in the Miller Waste family would be a mass shutdown for the location for a quick spread. Lucky enough, we have a physician on hand, so all the employees would be diagnosed and they'd be required to do tests. But what it does is everyone is dynamic in their jobs from other locations that we could also draw from. So we've always had employees understand other employees' roles and what they do within the company. So moving people around wouldn't be hard. In terms of vacations and the normal flu season, it's always been an issue. We always know that someone's going to need some time off, bereavement days, vacations, flus, colds, your child gets sick. And I think just that's the normal day-to-day. Lucky enough we have in-house that we have enough coverage there. But lucky enough this year we've had some great summer students. We normally lay them off at the end of September. And this week we had one of our full-time staff in the retail office go on holidays, and actually one of our summer students came back to cover for her for the week. So them being able to go to school online and from home has also given them the flexibility and us the flexibility to have them come and go if they need to if we need to cover something off. So we've been lucky like that.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Sheila?
I can't stress the importance of asking your workers to go and get the flu shot. And you might even consider if they make an appointment to go and get their flu shot, okay, if you can't get it on your personal time, it's okay if you go and get the flu shot on work time, because if they get flu-like symptoms, it affects everybody on the crew. So from a financial investment, it does make sense if they can take work time to go and get that flu shot.
Fantastic. And we did get a question in from Ted, and I'll ask it to the panel as we near the hour. If proper protocols are followed, social distancing, masks, no sharing equipment, etc., if one crew member needs to be tested, then why should everybody else sit out?
I don't think. I think it's a matter of personal preference. I don't think the whole crew needs to sit out. But if that's your company's policy, that you want to limit the spread amongst the team and amongst the rest of your company, then that's your decision. But it's a personal preference.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. We obviously ask the person that's symptomatic to step out and get tested until they're symptom free or they get back a negative test. If it spreads past that, I think like schools and others, if we had multiple or 2 people became sick, that would certainly elevate for my risk management that I would certainly consider. Now our company is fortunate because everybody runs in small crews. But I think, yeah, it's a risk management component, and each employer, depending on, your bench strength, the number of employees, and how easily it is to move people around, that's going to free up and help your decision making on covering that risk.
Peter, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I was just, it is a legacy from, I guess, one of the original risks that were early on in the pandemic, where they weren't sure how it was being transmitted from one employee to another or from one person to another. So being outside obviously reduces the risk of transmission. We know that now. But with my crews, they're, a small crew, they end up working in close proximity. If you have people in close proximity, like if they're sharing a truck and they're both wearing a mask, then I know public health deems that to be as if they're a close contact and they have to self-isolate. They're sharing a vehicle, or if they're working, within the 6 feet for days on end, like day after day after day, there's just too much risk, in my opinion, that and the test turnaround is so quick. I don't see there as much downside giving the extra person a day off as there is of letting somebody who has potentially got COVID to continue working.
Great. Thank you. John, any final comments on that?
I agree with Alan and James. It really comes down to risk management. Mm-hmm. Public health, though, is looking at one case. If one case is positive in a hospital, they're deeming that an outbreak. Mm-hmm. So it's a pandemic, and it is scary, and everyone's on the edge, and one person doesn't know if they're a carrier or not. So we really just have to be cautious, and being outside is definitely a benefit for us. But it really comes down to risk management, in my opinion.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Sheila, James, Alan, Peter, John, for your time, willing to share your information and your thoughts with us over the lunch hour. We're more prepared because we know how to prevent the spread of this virus. It's really up to us as employers to arm our teams with the right perspective and empower them with the information to keep themselves and those around them protected. It's our obligation as leaders, as Jeffrey Scott would say, to be the radio station for our teams and communicate regularly, to remind them of the importance of regular hygiene practices and why it's important to be proactive. So thank you for joining us. And on behalf of Landscape Ontario and the COVID-19 Task Force, stay positive, but test negative. Thanks, everybody. Take care.